The greatest challenges of our work, our teams, and even our businesses have nothing to do with strategy and everything to do with the state of our soul. What if the bottlenecks we call productivity issues or cultural problems are really signs that something deeper is out of alignment? Welcome to We Have a Spiritual Problem, a podcast where we confront the deeper questions beneath our personal struggles and collective crises. I am your host, Dr. Jeff Armstrong. I am not a theologian or a philosopher, or at least by training. I am a PhD exercise physiologist with an interest in the intersection of the physical and the spiritual. My guest is someone that lives at that intersection every day, Andrew Grinbaum, a soulful leader, business strategist, and founder of the Spirituality and Business Institute. Andrew works with leaders from major firms as well as hundreds of small business owners, helping them rediscover their purpose, build work environments where people genuinely thrive, and integrate spirituality into the systems that run their organizations. Remarkably, he operates 2 companies in just an hour a week, not through hacks, but through deeply mindful systems aligned with meaning and intention. Andrew's approach offers both a philosophical lens and practical tools for leaders hungry for something deeper than productivity tips. I'm looking forward to exploring how spiritual alignment becomes a real-world advantage in business. Andrew, it's my pleasure to have you on the We Have a Spiritual Problem podcast. When you use the word spiritual, what exactly do you mean, and how do you define spirituality in the context of business and leadership?
Sure, that's a great question, Jeff, and it's a deep question. So for me, spirituality, first of all, is the ability for somebody to go within and realize there's an internal world inside them, and there's something out there that connects us all. You don't have to be religious to be spiritual. In fact, I have many clients who are atheists or agnostic, and that's okay. They can still be spiritual people. I know it's a very loaded word. People think spiritual is religious or something like that, but really it's about a few things that, at least for me in my journey and having, helped thousands of people, small business owners primarily, things like values, purpose, mission, consciousness of what people are doing. These are all things that successful people have. It's like they're operating not with just their intellect. They're operating somewhere else. And again, it's got nothing to do with believing in God or a creator or anything like that. It helps. And, 95% of people believe in something, and that we can have a discussion of what that is. But for me, first of all, 95% of people believe in something. The other 5%, they can still have the right values. They can still have a consciousness about this world that, there's more to it than just their selfish needs. Those are important. There's nothing wrong with being selfish and wanting things for yourself. But we see, the world is in such a chaotic place. We're old enough to see, we're in a tough place. Right? The plastic in the ocean, the disconnection between people, mental health crisis, we can go on and on and on. All right? The political fighting. So there's got to be something more. And the reason I help, I started a nonprofit called Spirituality and Business Institute to help small business owners utilize spirituality and be, be out of the closet about it, so to speak, is that's the solution to our problem. And not only that, business people can pivot, can move very quickly. We see, I wish the government or the priests or the, administrators, the bureaucrats would solve our problems. I wish I could just lay back and see that the UN is solving the plastic in the ocean problem and the mental health crisis that's going on and the loneliness problem, right? Oh, and the education problem would be great, or the UN or the US government or any government. It's not happening. We can do it as entrepreneurs. All right. And I see this all the time. And that's who I connect with, these people who are genuinely trying to change the world. And by the way, for instance, I work with a company that's solving for poverty in the world. And the CEO admits it. He's an atheist, doesn't believe in God. But he's one of the most spiritual people I've ever met, because he realizes there's more than him. And he's already employed 6,000 poor women in Mexico City. And now they're doing it in Buenos Aires, and it's a for-profit company. And it's just a pleasure of just doing a um, couple coaching sessions with him, but I certainly didn't help him build his company or anything like that. But he says doesn't believe in God, but he really does. He believes in something greater, which is this planet, and the problem of poverty, right? He's no different in a way than Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa believed in God. Okay, she also had her doubts. By the way, if you read her autobiography, it's amazing. She had her doubts, yet she worked through it. And this guy doesn't believe in God, but he's solving for the world's problems. So that's a very long answer to a short question, but I think it's a good way to get going.
That's the perfect answer, and you are a perfect fit for this podcast, because that's basically how I define spirituality. Again, I want religion to get out of the way of spirituality, because too often it gets in that way.
Yep.
And we've had guests on here that are atheists. I had one couple on, good friends of mine, that he's an atheist and she's I don't know how she'd define herself, because she really doesn't go to church anymore because she just saw so much fault in the kind of evangelical Christian churches that she had been raised in. And she still believes in God, still believes in her faith, but just practices it a bit differently. I had another
spiritual,
good
not
friend
religious, right?
Right.
And most people are like that today.
And most people that are religious are not necessarily spiritual.
Yeah, so and that's a whole other thing. They think, my religion, Judaism, there's people out there with the big beards and the big black hats, right? Nothing wrong. They're spiritual, religious people, but they look religious. So people assume that's right, that they're spiritual, that they care about the world. And they don't necessarily. Just because you put on the garb, right, means nothing. So yes, religion without spirituality is actually, unfortunately, the cause of probably all the wars in the world. All the strife we have is one religious, my God is right. No, my God is right. And that's what people, instead of coming together. And by the way, that's what I like. So, I'm sure you saw my background. I study Kabbalah, for over 30 years. And let's call it a spiritual system, because it predates religion. So the lineage of the Kabbalah that I learned is from the Jewish lineage. But what I like about it is that Muslims have their Kabbalists, called the Sufis. The Catholics and the Christians have their Kabbalists. In fact, many of the Kabbalistic books, when they're first printed in the Middle Ages, the church printed them. So I study something that's almost 4,000 years old, that helps people bridge the gap connecting between humans, right? That's what we want to do. It's not about connecting to God, whatever that is. It's the God within, or it's our soul or our love, our heart within. And how do we connect? And what I like about it is that I can talk to Muslims about it. I can talk to Christians about it. I can talk to evangelicals about it. I can talk to atheists about it. It's great. And Jews even Jews are tough. We're tough people. So that's what kind of connects this. Instead of, it's not about two Kabbalists, a Muslim Kabbalist and a Jewish Kabbalist can get together and find common ground. Go, wow, we believe in the same stuff. Religious people will find ways to, oh no, my God is better. Crazy, right? So
sounds almost like a setup to a bad joke. It's like,
that's what the world
is. A Jewish
is.
Kabbalist and a Muslim Kabbalist walk into a bar.
Exactly.
So what is a spiritual problem, and how does it show up in an individual, a leader, or an organization?
Right. So I would say, for most of the people I work with, it starts with one, not taking a step back and, going within. It has to start your entrepreneurial journey, and every day, actually, if you're possible, should start by going within. And how do I want to improve myself? The only thing I can control in this world is my thoughts and my actions. That's it. And my reactions to what happens on the outside. So the people I work with, I first train them, and this is easier said than done, right? We're all a work in progress, all right? Like, I'm gray hair. I've been doing this for a while. I'm still trying to get there, whatever that is. But maybe I'm a few steps ahead of some people I work with, right? Is that how are you going to react to the world around you? That is the spiritual question. Are you going to react with love and with compassion and understanding, acceptance, courage in the face of obstacles? Or are you going to act out of fear or anger or pride or, any other negative emotion? So when we go within, realize that a lot of, and this is really great, that EQ in the last 35 years has validated so much of this stuff that's quote unquote spiritual. It's really great today. I lead with science and I show people that 70 to 90% of their decision making, first of all, is emotional. It's not intellectual. And that's why you can have a great company. I have a company I'm working with. They literally hired all of their developers and their top level staff from MIT, Harvard MBAs, like the best people, really the best. They spent a lot of money on them, and they can't get profitable. They're in the red, black, they're kind of like teetering for years because everybody's thinking up here with their intellect, trying to figure it out, instead of realizing that, guess what? The way you come into a meeting, if you had a bad day or a bad evening and you're still upset, right? It's going to cloud everything. So start within. That's spiritually is going within and go, I have to take responsibility. I have to be a leader, not on the outside. I first have to be a leader to myself and go, okay, I'm upset now. I'm not feeling happy or whatever it is. I'm operating out of sadness. Sad time, right? If you have teenage kids, right, they can poke your buttons, you can get upset, and now you have to go on a Zoom call. If anybody raised kids, right, work is so much easier than raising children, right? They can poke, they can push your buttons. Not me, of course, right? Because I'm spiritual.
Of course.
Of course not. Not me. So I have a fight with one of my teenage daughters, and then to come on a call, and now I'm seeing everything through that lens. So that's where we have to start. That's the biggest spiritual problem, is that people don't even recognize where they're operating from. That's where we start with. And then once you get there, then you can talk about, I asked one of my clients, and we did this just last year, and I asked her, what is your mission? Because we did strategic planning. We're coming to the end of the year. I'm a business coach, not just spiritual coach. So I have to do strategic planning with my clients. I asked her, what's your mission and what are your values? She's like, Andy, don't put me on a spot like that. I don't remember. I didn't prepare. We just went over it last year, but people forget. Why are they in business? She's a wonderful lady, this client of mine. She definitely has a mission. We found her values from last year, but we also saw that every issue she had, every problem or challenge that she got reactive to was because she was living off her values. Or she hired people who didn't have the same values, or she compromised her values. That's why she had problems. So interesting. So the second part is, if you just know what your values are, you discover them, and you live and you operate your company or you operate your department based on those values, and you're really authentic about it, the level of stress will certainly go down, and you'll be more successful, for sure.
So along that line, do you see spiritual problems as personal issues that spill into work, or as workplace issues that reveal deeper, more personal misalignments?
So it's both, right? That's a great question. But if I would have to start with something, I would say go inside, because it doesn't matter where you work. Some people, and I saw this with a client. It's so funny. The question I had the client yesterday, she hired a bunch of vendors over the last 6 months, and she kept replacing them because she had problems with them, but it was really her. And it took her a long time to get to a place where on yesterday's call, she realized it's me. I'm not clear with people. I rush into things. Her issues had her rush into things, sign contracts, pay money, and really not do her due diligence because she's very impatient. She wants to be liked. All these whatever nonsense was. It's not really nonsense. It's her operating system. So we realized we need to step back. What I tell some clients is we have to slow down to speed up. Let's slow down, and let's recalibrate. And now let's work on these internal problems of you being impatient and all these other things that she has. And recognize them. Even recognizing you're impatient, maybe you'll always be impatient, but then you can create an operating procedure or certain standards you're going to follow to avoid the negative part of being impatient, right? Or perfectionist or whatever. So I think it's always an internal problem because I've also had, I feel this other client who she's actually an executive, brilliant. She has a PhD and an MBA. She's in biotech. One of those brilliant people I've ever met. And she's one of the saddest people I've ever met too, because wherever she goes, she has the same problem. In corporations, she's switched jobs a few times. And by the way, she can do the work brilliantly, but she's having the same issues with corporations. A lot of these sales teams, very male dominated. There's toxic masculinity, all this kind of stuff. So she has to, you could say, oh, that's the issue in the company. It's toxic masculinity, or it's these guys being guys. But I know a lot of successful women who've learned how to deal with that, or they find a team that's not like that. So why does she keep getting into these situations? And it's because she hasn't really stood up for herself. She allows herself to be pushed around, and she blames it on, male culture. Yeah, men can be tough, right? Aggressive. We hit each other in the shoulder and do all sorts of guy things and say crude jokes. But I know tons of successful women who they never hear a crude joke. Maybe they do, but they have filters on. They don't care. They're moving forward. So, you know what I'm saying? So it's never on the outside. It starts on the inside. Because as long as she doesn't fix doesn't learn why she's attracting, unfortunately, these sort of people to her, there's something there for her to overcome. And once she recognizes these issues that she has and learns how to deal with them and operate within those limitations that she has, or she'll go past it. And I've seen that too. It's almost like people are in a certain movie and they keep going to see the same movie, the same horror movie, the same comedy movie. They love that movie. Well, no, you have to take yourself out of that movie, out of that theater, and go into a new theater. And that takes effort to get up off your seat and recognize it's up to you.
And that probably could be, well, I won't say probably, definitely could be said for our personal relationships too, family and everything else.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I'm just thinking of my own family relationships, and how I deal with my kids, my wife, and everything else. Is, oh, he's talking to me here. It's all, there's a little bit of truth in those, breakup lines that we get, where it's not you, it's me. Well, yeah, it is me.
It is.
But it's also me.
Yeah. The good thing about working spiritually, for instance, like knowing and getting deep and understanding really what your values are, is that you'll see also, spiritual work is holistic. If you work on yourself in business, it'll affect you in the positive at home and vice versa. And in fact, for most of us, I can speak for myself, my relationship with my wife and my children is much harder. Marriage is much harder than building any multi-million-dollar business I've ever built. Oh, that's easy. That's easy than being married. We just had our 24th anniversary. That was,
congratulations.
Thank you. Tough work.
Oh, yeah.
It is tough work, and many times we almost quit, and that's good. That means that we push through certain things. But 7 or 8 times we laugh, and other things will come up. But if you work on, let's say, your relationship with your wife or your husband, your partner, and realize where you need to change, that'll help you with your business as well. Now, I focus on business, but obviously this stuff, it's holistic.
Oh, yeah.
It's definitely holistic.
It's because everything is spiritual.
Correct. Everything starts inside. Yep.
So You run two companies in about an hour a week, which I'm amazed by. This is something that most leaders can't imagine. So, what does a spiritually aligned system look like, and how does it make this possible?
Sure. Um, well, you first, and that again, have to go within. You have to know what you're really good at and what you're really not good at. The problem with entrepreneurs is that they end up doing everything. They love doing, let's say they're a doctor. I've had a lot, I still have a couple doctors, like physicians who are great physicians. They decide to start a practice, right? Or they buy a practice and now they own a dermatological practice. And a few years into it, they're not just a dermatologist, they're the bookkeeper, they're the salesperson, they're the social media manager, the HR manager. They're doing too many things. And it ends up being actually a huge weight. They're stuck. They may be making more money, but they have, gold. They have handcuffs on. The handcuffs are just golden. They're diamond encrusted. They're by Rolex or Patek Philippe, or something. So Tiffany, that's all. They're just Tiffany handcuffs. So for me, my first business that I learned how to work virtually, I went into it. It was in the 2006. I started a co-working space, and then I built a chain in New York City. And I had already been consulting and being a marketing consultant and doing some coaching for about 10, 15 years. And so I saw these problems already. I wanted to put money where my mouth is and start my own business, not just be a coach and consultant. So I started this company in a very competitive field, right? But I knew already what I'm good at. Now, what I mean by 1 hour a week is that, if you're doing what you love only, it's not really work. Like I do more than 1 hour of coaching a week, but that part I love. It doesn't seem like work. When my clients can call me on WhatsApp 2 a.m. If I'm up, I'll pick it up because I love helping people. And I knew what my strengths and weaknesses are for this business. So the first thing I did is find a partner to work with. It could be a partner, could be a project manager, could be an assistant, whatever it is. You have to find somebody who loves doing what you hate doing. And I found a partner, God bless him. They actually bought me out. He bought the company from me when I moved to Florida. And he's a bureaucrat. He's an administrator. He loves it. He loves having piles of papers all around him. He's happy if there's piles of paperwork all around him. Oh, yeah, I get like nauseous thinking about paperwork and all the administrative parts of business. He loves it. He hates sales. He thinks it's slimy. Sales and marketing is slimy. Great. I love selling. So, I knew what I was good at. It was a pleasure to welcome people to the business. And in the beginning, I did that. And he did all the bureaucratic work, all the paperwork, the contracts, all this stuff. And then, because I was really good I just focused on what I'm really good at. I created standard operating procedures around it. And then about a year and a half into it, I taught an office manager how to do it. It's just natural. It's what I naturally did. I was a 10 out of 10 on it. I wasn't teaching her how to do the paperwork, which I'm a 4 out of 10 on. And then they learned it. So I had a string of office managers. And in each location, there'd be an office manager and a director of the center when we grew, who did sales really at a high level because I do it at a high level. And then I started teaching at a university. I wrote 3 books during that time. I was consulting. I was raising little kids. I was able to do all this other stuff because I had certainly 2 people who I looked at my partners. One, my actual partner who did the administration, and the other person was the office manager or the director who did the sales. And at that point, I was just sitting in my office almost feeling guilty for making money and just sitting there and having nothing to do. I did actually, and that's another thing. I had to work on that because in our society, we're like, you have to work hard to make money. And I did actually. I set up this business to work without me. But at that point, we just sit back, right? And it just makes money. I have hundreds of clients and they pay their rent every month and I get a certain percentage of it. Amazing. So That's the process I went through. It. Everybody has a different process. So I guess the lesson is that there's no such thing as a self-made man or woman. Everybody has help. And you need to find the help you need to be able to run your businesses virtually. Like with my staffing company, I have a team in the Philippines. They're amazing and they recruit for me. So if a client comes, they need a bookkeeper or they need a virtual assistant or a marketing manager, I'm not the one finding that person for them. So that's why I can run it pretty much virtually. And then I have somebody doing my books too. So I just look at a dashboard. I see, oh, these people paid, these people didn't. Let's send them another bill. And, I send reviews to people review the work. They seem to be doing okay. So getting to working 1 hour a week on a business takes maybe a couple of years to set it up like that, right? It doesn't come from day one, but it's totally possible if you start with knowing that you can't do everything and you're probably really terrible at many things. Be okay with that. You can't do everything. So that's a very long answer to a short question, but it's a great question.
It's a great answer to a short question. I mean, I think it's important for us to understand that, and it kind of leads into my next question, but it's important for us to understand that we are not good at everything. And sometimes we put too much effort in being mediocre at everything, and we end up failing at everything rather than succeeding.
Correct. I'll give you another story. I have a CEO client who, I went over their P&Ls with him, and we found all these problems. I just didn't understand the P&L and asked him, what does this mean? Because I try to train I'm also a business coach that trains people, right, how to scale their businesses. So P&Ls, you should review your P&Ls, once a month, right? Everything should be reconciled. The 10th of the month, we typically review the P&L for the previous month. And I'm looking at P&Ls, we don't understand anything. I asked him, what is this? He's like, I don't know. What is this? I don't know. It just seems unusual. And so, why don't you ask your bookkeeper about this? And she's a pretty high level book. He's like, well, I'm like afraid to. We realized that the limitation the CEO had, very successful guys that, because he's the CEO, he's the owner of a multi-million-dollar company, he should know everything already. So he felt embarrassed going to his bookkeeper and asking stupid questions. I'm like, no, you pay her. You're the CEO. You're allowed to be stupid. All right. You should be stupid. Right. So we had a meeting. I'll show you how it's done. We had a meeting with the bookkeeper. Excuse me. And I started asking a bunch of stupid questions. Like, her name is Margaret. It's not Margaret, whatever her name is, Margaret. I just don't understand what this means and this. And we found she was making errors, actually. Right. And afterwards, he's like, oh, that's how you do it. I'm like, yeah, just look stupid. You're not expected to be a bookkeeper, an accounting professional, right? You don't know anything about finance. He's actually a very high-end carpenter. He does really high-end work. You're a master of carpentry. That's it. But you're paying money for somebody to be a master of bookkeeping. So you can go in there and you pay her, and you pay her for the privilege of being stupid and asking stupid questions. Right? So he's like, oh, okay, now his books are fine. Right? But it took me to show him, look at me being stupid. And I didn't really, and I still don't understand at the level of a bookkeeper. Right? So it's okay to be stupid, ask stupid questions, know what you're just not good at, right? And ask this other client yesterday too, the reason she got into all these relationships with vendors that didn't work out is that she didn't ask them all the stupid and sometimes hard questions, about how they're going to work, how they deliver how they're going to meet her expectations. And so go in, I told you yesterday, from now on, when you negotiate with a vendor, negotiate like you're a really brilliant sixth grader. Go in there, ask every question like a brilliant sixth grader would ask. These like my kids' daughters, like super intelligent, high, really into math, super nerdy, super intelligent kids, very extroverted, and they'll ask you a million stupid questions. That's how you have to be. That's your job as a CEO, you know? Because you're CEO saying, oh, now I'm the CEO and owner, I'm supposed to know everything. Well, I wish. Nobody knows everything.
So that kind of leads me to the next question is, what patterns do you consistently see among leaders who are burned out, overwhelmed, or disconnected from their purpose?
It's a great question. Well, it's, I realized that, let's look at it the other way. Let's say the people who get there, the top 1%, who are very effective at building enterprises, they think differently and they don't get burnt out. They think differently. And the way they think about things is they use their intellect. It's almost like they have three brains. They use their intellect. They also use their gut. What I mean by that, in our gut, we have this gut feeling. We have a gut sense, right? We actually have neurons, right, in our gut area. It's like bigger than the size of a cat. We almost have like a cat brain in our stomach, right? That's how people look at it. Look at it like you have a cat inside you. That speaks to you non-verbally, but it's there. And so, are you using that gut to also make decisions? Usually, if somebody's burnt out, the answer is no. Right? They're thinking with their intellect, like these two clients were. They don't want to look bad. They all these thoughts instead of going within. And the way you balance it is actually with your heart. We know what heart-based thinking is. Going from your heart, it's one of those things that you don't need to define, because we know what heart-based is for a lot of people, instead of calling it spiritual. They say, at least in Kabbalah, that the heart is the vessel for the soul. Your soul expresses itself through your heart. So tell people, are you engaging what would your heart do? And I, in fact, have people, and this has been validated by a company called HeartMath, happens to be one of my clients. Have you heard of them? HeartMath Institute.
I have not.
They have about 35 years of data on how to think with your heart, basically. And they've validated, and they teach it now to thousands of nurses and all sorts of people, the Army and at the UN and all sorts of places, how to think with your heart. And that basically means, breathing into your heart and taking your consciousness down to your heart. They're pretty simple techniques to learn. But the point is that will balance your head and your gut, so you make the right decisions, right? What would be the highest value right now to, what's the best next step? But if you're thinking only with your intellect, for sure it leads to burnout. For sure people burn out because they make decisions based on physicality. Oh, I have to do this for my job, or I have to take this job or start this business because X, Y, and Z, not because of really what's important to them. So thinking with your heart and balancing, so you can trust your gut, right? We don't trust our gut. Will for sure lead to burnout. That is the number one thing. So again, I can give an example of a very high-powered, he's still my client, a coaching client who works with BlackRock and with governments, and he has all these incredible connections, brings the biggest people together, and through a process, he felt burnt out though, and he felt untethered. He just felt lost, even though he knows everybody. Like if you want to meet the prime minister of this country or that country, he can get you a meeting. That's the kind of person. That's where he operates, right? Very, very successful. But he felt completely burnt out. So we were doing coaching together, and he was doing some meditations, and he connected with his heart, and he realized, what is he living for? He already had one divorce. He gets along with his ex-wife. His kids, never sees him. He's gotten married again. He has a young son. And he realized the reason he feels completely burnt out is that he hardly ever sees his son. Like hardly ever. He travels around the world. And the change he made was he's going to spend at least half his time with his son. All right, half the time with his son, and I'm going to take him with him, so he's there. And it transformed everything for him because he realized that what was missing. He had to be like the business executive, right? This global leader who connects people and does these huge things in the world. Yeah, but what about your family? You already kind of screwed up they're okay, but you already have a divorce and your kids live in another state, in another country, actually. You missed raising them. So why are you living for? No wonder you're burnt out. Deep inside, he knew family was important, but he was ignoring it because that's what he's supposed to do, right? You're supposed to be a man and work and accomplish these great things. Yeah, but if you don't know your kids, what's the point? So the big change for him, even though I was business consulting with him, right? Business coaching, he really actually changed it was more about, right? It's holistic, more about recognizing. He's like, the first thing he did after a couple sessions is he went visit his son who was in another country with his mom and was there for like a week. Was completely transformed. He could work from there. There's Wi-Fi everywhere. He just happened to be you can work from anywhere. You can work in the middle of, a jungle. All right. So it's always about learning when you can connect to what's important and appreciate what's important in your life. Then all of a sudden people have energy. We have unlimited energy to do things. There's people I know who are 65, 70 who are starting businesses. And I know other people who are 40 who are burnt out, who are want to retire. What's the difference? The people of 65 have their priorities right. And everything is, they understand what's really important, right? Giving back, sharing with the community, being with your family, taking care of your employees, your vendors, all this kind of stuff coming from your heart. If you really are truly sharing and also sharing with yourself, you can turn things around, even if you're burnt out. But that takes, again, slowing down to speed up. People today are working so fast, doing so many things like this guy was, doing so much that he was empty, completely empty. You could see it on his face, just not there, and it's sad. Because from the outside, you look at a person like that and go, wow, he's meeting with all these CEOs and he's making all this money. Wow, he must have a charmed life. He flies business class everywhere and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, there was nothing there. All it needed was for him to reconnect with his son and make that a priority. Okay, and maybe not make $1 billion next year, but only $500 million. It's okay. You'll survive on $500 million, or whatever he makes.
Yeah, I'd like to try that.
Yeah.
So, you work with so many different leaders in so many different areas, and many of those leaders are going to say they're going to claim that they want more meaning, but just invariably default back to old habits. What helps somebody truly reconnect with their why?
Well, I actually have a process for that. The why is something that so I have a process for that. It's great to see that the TED Talk, Simon Sinek, how great leaders inspire action. I think that's called. It's a very famous Simon Sinek TED Talk. And the leaders who are really, in the flow, they know their why, right? That's inspirational. And if you have to stop and figure out your why and work from it, because that's what gives you that internal energy to wake up every day and work hard. For sure, you have to work hard, whether you're inspired or not. So you might as well be inspired, right? They have to slow down. I have a process for it. Other people have processes too. They have to slow down. And if they feel disconnected or they feel like they're running on empty, it means that it's impossible to inspire your team if you're not inspired. I always bring up my wife. She works with a great, great team at Cisco. She's a high level person at Cisco, and she works with a couple executives, and these people really know their why, and really, and their whole team. They inspire the whole team. You can feel it. They're really doing. They're not in it to, connect. Cisco products to everybody. That's not what they're doing. They're really selling and marketing Cisco products. because it is changing the world. It's protecting our our global internet, like our infrastructure, and it's all these kind of things it's doing to make people's lives better. That's where they're operating from, and they're very inspired by it. That every day they can look at the board. They have these like data rooms. They can see 18 million phishing attempts were thwarted by their software for this one company. Good, thank God, because that company has thousands of employees. A lot of people could be a hospital, right? And there's hackers trying to get in and destroy that hospital. And so what they're doing is protecting that hospital. So that's their why, right? Protecting and strengthening this global infrastructure. Different than I'm here to sell you something, right? And it's very inspirational because they see they have a mission. Wow. So these people did a lot of work, though, to get to their why. And you can get to it pretty quickly. But I would say that at least the executives I've seen, the high power, the senior VPs and above who are doing really well, if they're really inspirational, it's authentic. They're authentically inspired by their mission. Right? It doesn't have to be to change it's always about changing the world in their niche, right? In tech, there's people selling tech products and there's people selling something more powerful, like these people at Cisco. And that's why, by the way, it's, you never hear about Cisco, but it's probably, I don't know, a quarter the size of Apple. It's a huge company because they're so inspired to help the world. So I don't know if I answered your question. I don't remember what the question was.
No, I think that's a great answer. Yeah, and I could see it in so many different avenues. And we're talking about really high-level executives to a certain extent, but the same thing comes down to the custodian at your local elementary school. I mean, having their why kind of takes their job from being an ordinary job to, when I write extraordinary, I like to put parentheses around extra to emphasize that, it's okay to be in a quote unquote ordinary position, but finding your extra is finding your why. How am I doing? What am I doing with this? And realizing that, I'm a college professor at a small regional institution that I would argue, given our current administration, is not going to go anywhere unless they get their act together. But for me, that being actually, if I can impact one person and change their life in a way, this is a small podcast. This conversation, if it reaches one person and changes their approach, then we've done something significant here.
That's right.
And I think that's how we have to approach finding our whys when it comes to our lives.
You're absolutely correct. It's not about changing everybody. You heard the story of the starfish, little boy with the starfish.
Oh yeah.
That story, right? He's throwing the starfish back. So we have to save, we can't save all the starfish, but we can save the starfish that, fell out of the ocean. We could throw that starfish back. And same with me. That's why I taught. I love teaching and I love going on podcasts because yes, if we change one person, we've done our work. That's why I try to work with a lot of business leaders. I want to clean the ocean and I want to, et cetera, et cetera. I want to do all these things. Impossible. But I can help coach people, right? Just like you teach, I can help people go out there in the world and make a huge difference. I just saw something on LinkedIn. One of my students now became the global director for finance for one of the big hotel chains, Hilton or Marriott. This is a person who I inspired 20 years ago, who really loved my kind of like no nonsense way of teaching. And I brought in practical examples and she told me that and she really loved it. And now she's a global director of a global company. Wow. So I hope I had a small, little piece of something, right? From 20 years ago when she was a grad student. And, on your point, I remember I was very young and I was fourth grade, third grade. And I would have, I'm one of those kids that always talk to adults. And I was speaking to my bus driver. I remember this lady. And I talked to her and she said, she loved being a bus driver. And I'm like, because I talked to her, I was like, oh, and I was really like, again, a little forward. Maybe I was obnoxious. I'm like, you're so smart. Why don't you go to college? Like do something. Like you're so smart. You're like a smart woman. And she's like, I did. I went to college for a couple of years. It wasn't for me. And we were talking the bus. And she's like, listen, I love doing this. This is very satisfying. First of all, I make as much as a teacher. The same. I'm not rich, but I make the same amount. Most of the time, she told me, we sit around in the break room playing cards most of the day while the teachers are teaching. And then I get to protect these kids and make sure they get home. I feel satisfied. I take care of people's kids in the morning and the afternoon. She found her why. She's a simple person. She doesn't need to be a millionaire. She certainly doesn't want to work that hard. Right? She worked in the morning, picked everybody up, dropped them off. All the bus drivers played cards during the day, and in the afternoon, she took kids home. She's done. And she's happy. So that's somebody who's connected to their why. And it was a big lesson for me, like, wow, I think everybody has to go to become a doctor or a lawyer or something, right? All my family were all doctors, right? I'm the black sheep. I didn't become a doctor. I'm the black sheep of the family. I'm a consultant and coach and professor, lowly paid professor. But that's a big lesson, that there's people, unfortunately, like the CEO I met, this high-powered global connector, let's call him that, who is completely empty, who can meet anybody in the world and do any sort of business with the biggest companies. He felt he had less of a purpose than this bus driver, who probably made $23,000 then. I don't know how much she was making. Not much. And just playing cards, she was so happy. And she's like, Andy, I don't know what you're talking about. I have a great life. And I help people every day because she did. She did care. She'd tell kids to shut up in the back. And, she kept a tight ship. I remember her. And that was back then. I think they were allowed to smoke on the bus back then, if I recall, back in the day when I was a kid, if you could believe that. I think
I can believe it. I'm 62. So.
Okay, so remember, they smoke everywhere. I was watching Mad Men now. Everybody's like smoke. I think she may have been smoking on the bus while driving kids around. Okay, that's a whole other story. Thank God we changed. But I think she was like smoking cigarettes, driving us around. She had a great life. She felt completely fulfilled. May we all get to that place where we find our simple why, the simple ways we can share every day, like this bus driver did. Find our way to be that person and to be happy about the people we touch, and all this striving, it's great to strive. And obviously I help, my whole point is as a business coach to help people scale their companies. But sometimes you can make $100,000 a year as a business owner and be much happier and fulfilled than making $1 million a year and not having time for your family,
And think about the impact that one woman had just on you and the impact that that's now ultimately had universally. I mean, you're talking about CEOs that know pretty much every world leader. That woman's conversation with you on that day has had a global impact.
Right. That's right. It's crazy. She doesn't even know it. She saved who knows how many people she impacted. And we're circling back. That is what spirituality is about. Understanding there's a connection between all of us. And as long as we're, trying to be happy, it's not easy in this world. Try to be happy. Get yourself to that place. Appreciate what that you can affect people every day in the positive, including yourself. And yes, that can connect, as you said. I didn't even think about it until you said it, right? All these people are being affected by this conversation I had with a bus driver back in 1980. Right? Crazy. Yep. But amazing. And that's a miracle. So she's still, I don't know where she is. I don't remember her name. She's still affecting thousands of people because of that conversation. Yep. You hit it. You're good. Very nice.
That has been such an impact on my life when I recognize that, those small connections are really big things. I've been asked the question before, if you could go back in time and change one thing in your life, what would you change? That's absolutely nothing, because if I go back and change, there's going to be a rippling effect that who knows how it's going to impact.
That's right.